of work. U.S. jobless numbers continue to skyrocket amid the coronavirus pandemic. Fight for the unborn. Around 36 senators asked the Trump administration to continue pro-life protections during the COVID-19 outbreak. Holy Thursday. Orthodox Christians in Jerusalem are preparing for Easter this weekend. An ode to joy. Pope Francis says a gift from the Holy Spirit can lead Christians far beyond happiness. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, April 16th, 2020. Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. President Donald Trump believes the United States is past its peak of new coronavirus cases. Still, 5.2 million Americans filed for unemployment just last week, bringing the total number of jobs lost to a startling 22 million. Nearly 12 million people are now receiving unemployment checks. Correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
Battling the coronavirus.
The data suggests that nationwide we have passed the peak on new cases.
And now, President Donald Trump's plan to move forward.
These encouraging developments have put us in a very strong position to finalize guidelines for states on reopening the country.
For businesses that were slammed.
It was like apocalyptic. It was the scariest day ever.
Ana Castillo, who runs a cruise parking lot, is not alone. Roughly 22 million people have sought unemployment benefits in the past month, easily the worst stretch of U.S. job losses on record.
It's not just like the business, it's like the people behind it.
Meanwhile, in the midst of the crisis, President Trump wants to fill key positions and is threatening recess appointments.
The current practice of leaving town while conducting phony pro forma sessions is a dereliction of duty that the American people cannot afford during this crisis.
And in this crisis, for Americans who may be worried about the coronavirus impacting food processing facilities,
I want to assure you the American food supply is strong, resilient, and safe.
To employers in that sector,
it's critical that you follow CDC guidelines and guidance and best practices to keep all of your employees and people safe and healthy.
And from the Democrat who wants to sit in the Oval Office next year.
OSHA should immediately enforce current guidelines across all employers with significant risk of exposure, like grocery store workers, meat processing plants.
That was correspondent Owen Jensen reporting. As scientists seek a cure for COVID-19, some experts are pushing to lift a ban on research using tissue of aborted babies. 35 Republican senators have written President Trump urging him to keep this pro-life protection in place. Correspondent Eric Rosales reports. Eric?
Well, Tracy, Republicans, they're outraged. One Republican senator in particular, Kelly Loeffler, tells me that, quote, this is just another attempt by Democrats to try to expand abortions.
Scientist Kim Hassenkrug wants to use human fetal tissue from elective abortions, transplant it into mice, and then infect those humanized mice with COVID-19 to find a cure. 35 Republican senators say, no way. They sent a letter to President Trump writing, quote, many experts agree that this antiquated practice of using aborted baby organs and tissue in experiments has been surpassed by modern ethical technologies.
We're so blessed to have President Trump, a pro-life president, here protecting life, to make sure that he knew that he had our support and standing behind him, that we not anywhere get close to thinking about using fetal tissue for this.
Last June, an existing government contract for research involving human fetal tissue from elective abortions expired. The Department of Health and Human Services announced it would not renew the contract. That effectively ended this type of research.
We've not found that type of research to be helpful in the past, and we want to continue to be able to say, let's value all life and not literally put a price on an aborted child, and then to be able to say we're going to harvest them to be able to then do further research.
Stem cell researcher Irving Weissman admitted to the Washington Post, this is a shot in the dark, but, quote, it's stupid not to try. Pro-life experts argue researchers can actually purchase humanized mice right now.
Such models include the human CD34 positive NSG humanized mouse developed using CD34 positive stem cells from cord blood, again, without the use of human fetal tissue.
Some pro-life critics have even questioned whether the women who had these abortions even knew that their babies would be used for such research. Tracy?
All right. Thank you, Eric. Correspondent Eric Rosales reporting for us tonight. Alliance Defending Freedom has filed a lawsuit on behalf of pro-life advocates in North Carolina arrested for praying outside of an abortion facility in Greensboro. Members of the Christian ministry Love Life were arrested after police said they were in violation of the state's stay-at-home order that bans, quote, travel for a non-essential function. Joining me now to talk more about this are Justin Reeder, the founder of Love Life, and by phone, Denise Harley, legal counsel at Alliance Defending Freedom. Thank you both for coming on. Justin, I want to start with you. Love Life often ministers to people outside of abortion facilities. Were you at all surprised by the resistance that your members received from police?
Yes, absolutely. We were there peacefully prayer walking, offering real choices, real help for those families while honoring social distancing. We were under 10 people. We were 10 plus feet apart. We had hand sanitizer with us. And so, yeah, we were shocked that when they arrived, they began to write us tickets, and they also arrested us. And when they wrote us that ticket, Tracy, they actually wrote illegal gathering of over 10 people, which was incorrect. There was only 5 people there. They drew a line through that, but continued with the arrest and cited us for unlawful travel for non-essential things. So, yeah, we were shocked that while abortion centers remain open with zero restriction, they are restricting a Christian witness out there while honoring social distancing.
Well, Denise, I want to bring you in on this conversation. As legal counsel for Justin and the members of Love Life, why was it important to file this lawsuit?
Well, this isn't about public health and safety. This is about the government taking advantage of a crisis to silence speech that it doesn't like. And no matter what kind of crisis we're in, a government cannot ban the First Amendment. But what we've seen here from the city of Greensboro is targeting of one particular Christian pro-life viewpoint that the city doesn't like, and it's unconstitutional. It's unfair under the First Amendment, and there's no place for religious hostility. So we're filing the complaint as a warning shot to not only restore Love Life's rights, but also to protect the freedoms of Christians around the nation who may want to do the same.
Denise, do you think there's a double standard here?
Oh, absolutely. If you look at the order that the city says it's enforcing, it allows people to go hiking and walking and picnic in the park and even go golfing. So why in the world would Love Life not be able to walk and pray on the public sidewalks when Love Life has been honoring the social distancing and public health and safety guidelines the whole time? It's absolutely nothing but targeting of a certain viewpoint. And what the city attorney told me was that Love Life should pray at home.
Well, Denise, what are the next steps in this case?
Well, we're happy to hear that the county is allowing the order to expire tonight. And so, nonetheless, we're going to go forward with our complaint because any violation of First Amendment rights is worth fighting for in the courts. And Love Life has been deprived for 3 weeks now of its ability to pray and offer its ministry, to speak freely, and to practice its religious beliefs. And it's been subject to arrest, as Justin has mentioned. And so we're going to continue to pursue this. We're looking forward to a good court ruling that we can use to, again, not only restore Love Life's rights, but to send a warning shot to potentially other governments, local governments around the nation that might want to target pro-life views in this very unconstitutional way.
Justin, quickly, I want to ask you, what's next for you, and what's your message to other pro-life advocates who may be watching this?
Yeah, we continue on with our same mission. We're there to offer help and resources to families that are hurting. If abortion centers remain open, we must be there as a Christian witness. This is the time for the church to rise up, not to cower in fear, but for us to be present. We are called to love our neighbor as ourselves. That's the born and the preborn. So let us be present if abortion centers remain open.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Justin. Justin Reeder, founder of Love Life, and Denise Harley, senior counsel, that is, with Alliance Defending Freedom. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks again for sharing the story.
Arkansas's Attorney General is asking a federal appeals court to allow the state to ban most abortions during the coronavirus pandemic. A federal judge allowed the state's only abortion clinic to continue performing the procedure after the state banned it last week. The Prime Minister of Japan is extending a state of emergency to the entire country as the coronavirus pandemic continues to spread. Shinzo Abe first announced a state of emergency for half a dozen districts around Tokyo last week. Japan has almost 9,000 cases of COVID-19 and more than 175 deaths, according to Johns Hopkins University. The Vatican has replaced the head of its financial watchdog agency. An official from the Bank of Italy has been named the new director. The office is in charge of international cooperation and fighting money laundering. The changes follow an investigation into the purchase of luxury real estate in London by the Secretariat of State. The Vatican has created a new commission to address COVID-19 to help support churches and communities around the world.
To also invite all of humanity, starting from these communities, to begin to think about the world of tomorrow, recognizing that this virus has forced us to make an experience of life in a way that we probably have never, done.
Cardinal Peter Turkson, president of the Vatican department in charge of the commission, says the crisis forces us to recognize humanity is one family and must live in solidarity. The new commission is made up of 5 working groups to put actions in place for the future. Father Augusto Zampini, adjunct secretary of the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development, joins us now from Rome. Father, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for calling. A pleasure.
So, Father, how is this commission for COVID-19 going to help church communities now and in the future?
Well, the first is about immediate help. No? The churches that are in need, how to connect the churches that are in need with the churches that are willing to be generous with their own talents, with their money, with their own resources. That's the first line of contribution. The second is to identify which churches are working with, particularly with hospitals or healthcare centers in poor regions, and how can the universal church be more, agile in helping the ones who are most in need. This will be the first idea of the Pope, but then there's a second one that is more in the middle and long term, that is analyzing, studying and proposing different ideas for the whole socioeconomic and health and security issues that this pandemic is dragging us into. So how can we help also societies through the church and through the local churches to respond in a better way to this pandemic and to push what we call for the common good, no? The good of everyone and the health of everyone.
Father, I'm curious, is this the first time that so many Vatican departments and other institutions have been working closely together? And if so, does this change the inner workings of the Vatican?
Yeah, that's a good question. I am relatively new in the Vatican. I've been working here for 3 years, only since the Dicastery was created for integral human development. But I haven't recalled, I don't remember this kind of inter-Vatican task force. So it could be a way of responding in a more agile and a more effective way to the needs of the world. Could be. I think that's something that the Pope is considering, and also that's something that we are enjoying it. I mean, we are discovering that we can work together, and together we can do greater things that on our own in our own department. And I think governments are in that line as well. At least here in Italy, some ministries are working together, and they discover that joining forces is always more efficient than working in isolation.
Absolutely. Well, I know the International Monetary Fund is forecasting a 3% drop in the global gross domestic product, which would, of course, be greater than what happened in the Great Depression. In your experience, do you think that the economy will be able to bounce back after this?
That's the $1 million question. I think that we are going to face very, very tough times, I'm afraid. So that's why we are working, flat out in the church. So I think the image that we have is that the whole economic globalization is in pause at the moment, or at least the one that we know. We cannot go backward. We cannot press fast forward and continue business as usual. So how can we reset and create a bouncing back, but in a more inclusive way, in a way that we can provide healthcare for everyone, so that we can really prevent this kind of pandemics, and in a way that also it could be more sustainable. And what we want basically in the bouncing back is how the economy can help to have not sick, but healthy people, healthy institutions, and a healthy planet. That's an opportunity that we are having at present with this crisis. Remember that in Greek, crisis is something terrible, but also an opportunity. We are working so that it could be a good opportunity for the benefit of all.
Well, thank you so much, Father, for coming on. We appreciate your time and, of course, your insight. Father Augusto Zampini, Adjunct Secretary of the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development. Thank you again, Father.
Thank you, and keep safe. God bless.
Coming up, why Pope Francis says joy is more than an emotion. And an ICU doctor talks about what it's like caring for coronavirus patients. Pope Francis says joy is more than just a burst of emotion.
Questa gioia, questa che ci riempie, è il frutto dello Spirito Santo.
At his daily Mass at the Vatican, the Holy Father says joy is the fruit of the Holy Spirit, a grace received by God. When we experience this great joy, we can understand the difference from feeling happy or positive. Pope Francis reminds us this joy is our strength. Tonight, as the number of coronavirus cases here in the U.S. tops more than 600,000, we talk to a doctor on the front lines of the nation's battle against this potentially deadly disease. Dr. Eustace Fernandes is a pulmonary and critical care specialist in Indiana, and he joins me now by Skype. Dr. Fernandes, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
Well, no, first off, we should probably let our viewers know that you're speaking to us as an individual and not on behalf of the hospitals where you work. So we want to make sure that everybody knows that. I know that you've been treating patients with COVID-19, many of them so ill that they ended up in the ICU. Can you talk about those patients' needs and also how caring for them differs from what you're used to seeing?
Sure. Anytime someone ends up in the intensive care unit, it's a moment of stress. It's a moment of anxiety. Obviously, they're coming to us because they are critically ill. They're at some point in their illness, and sometimes it's the early phases of illness where we choose to move them to the intensive care unit for fear that they might worsen and to initiate early and aggressive therapies to try and prevent them from needing a ventilator. More often, what we're seeing in our intensive care unit is that patients are coming to us already critically ill and requiring a ventilator. So at that point, they are greeted by a team of people who have spent their entire careers preparing to take care of them. So this includes doctors, respiratory therapists, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, pharmacists, and respiratory therapists. And these people are highly trained, highly skilled, and they have two things in balance. First and foremost is taking care of the patient. The second is taking care of themselves because they don't want to become a healthcare worker who has become infected. So the care is highly specialized, and most of it consists of good supportive care. So what I mean by good supportive care is that the work of breathing is taken care of either by supplemental oxygen or a ventilator machine. Nutrition is cared for, their skin is cared for. We're watching very carefully for signs of secondary infections that can occur after the coronavirus has done its damage. And of course, we're looking for this intense inflammatory response. It's the body's immune system that seems to be hyper responsive to COVID-19 and can do a lot of damage to the body, particularly the lungs.
Can you talk a little bit more about that, the damage that it can do to the lungs? Is it something that you've seen with, say, other conditions, or is it much more intense?
There are similarities between a severe case of seasonal influenza, or it's probably more similar to the H1N1 epidemic from a few years back. What I've noticed in our care of the patients with COVID-19 is that they seem to come to us sicker. Their ability to retain their oxygen levels is much poorer, and they seem much more medically fragile. There is a certain feeling of helplessness when they enter this spiral where you can't get enough oxygen to the body, and then other things begin to collapse, such as their blood pressure or their kidney function. And so it's similar in some ways, but the level of severity of illness seems a bit higher.
You know, I want to ask you this last question. I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I'm sure this has been an incredibly tough time for you in your profession. As a Catholic physician, can you talk about your faith a little bit and how it's helping you during this time?
My faith animates everything I do. And my father, who recently passed away, taught us that we need to see Jesus Christ in our patients. And that's what I try and do. It's an incredibly isolating experience to be sick with COVID-19 and just trying to be present to the patient as much as possible and try and care for their every need. Another important part of this is caring for the family. We don't allow visitors currently. So we make a point of calling the family every day. The physician calls the family every day and said, this is what's happening with your loved one. This is what I'm worried about today. So it's a way of ministering to that family and consoling them when they're just filled with anxiety and can't be at the bedside of the people they love the most. I pray constantly that the Lord will guide my hands, guide my decision-making, because we are really in uncharted territories. And then the last thing, I try and keep in mind that all of this is part of the plan of a loving Father. And so there are many things that are tragic and many things that we don't understand. I do understand that in the end, Jesus Christ is triumphant over everything. And I rely on that to get me through difficult moments and great human tragedies.
Well, Dr. Fernandes, thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for coming on. And most importantly, thank you for all that you're doing. We really appreciate it. Dr. Eustace Fernandes, thanks again.
Thank you very much.
And a reminder, EWTN broadcasts Mass throughout the day. Mass airs at 8 a.m., noon, and 7 p.m. Eastern. We're also showing the Pope's daily Mass and other special programming throughout the day. We also have Eucharistic adoration from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. on our website, EWTN.com. Up next, Orthodox Christians celebrating Easter this weekend perform an ancient tradition with coronavirus precautions. And it is a big day for Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. Orthodox Christians are celebrating Holy Thursday this week. Greek Orthodox clergy gathered today for the traditional washing of the feet ceremony in Jerusalem. Greek Orthodox Patriarch of the Holy Land, Theophilus III, led the traditional ceremony. This year, it was moved from the atrium of the Holy Sepulchre to a church inside the compound due to the coronavirus restrictions. And finally tonight, it is Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI's birthday. Benedict turns 93 today. He usually celebrates his birthday in typical Bavarian fashion, but due to the coronavirus, he was not able to receive visitors. This Sunday marks the 15th anniversary of his election to the papacy. He stepped down in 2013 and lives inside of a Vatican monastery. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. We're back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night and God bless.